Hi, everybody. So, as I promised, at 6 o'clock, I have a ability through Google Plus for you to join my conversations. Well, you have nobody. I don't expect anybody for a while. But I'm just going to keep doing this until people start liking some of my comments or hating it, actually. Okay, doesn't matter. The subject I wanted to talk about today was net neutrality. The reason why, FCC just passed a regulation saying that net neutrality is a reality and that they're going to take over. The government's going to take over and begin giving this regulation. The premise of which they said this was, in fact, that it would help small businesses because large businesses could throttle the internet and charge more for preferences of technology and the internet. And more importantly, they would do this to prevent small businesses and innovation to be encouraged, because they would, if a good company came up and had the ability to compete with them, like Netflix or some other provider, they could actually throttle that and cause them to not be able to afford it. The reality is, I live here in what we call Silicon Beach in California. It's outside of LA. Actually, it's part of LA, some of it is. Some of it's part of the Hollywood area. It's kind of all mixed up. Westwood, by UCLA. It's a very thriving community where we have a lot of community that deal with physical fitness and as well as technology, because a lot of the technologists live here because Google and Yahoo, Facebook, and the list goes on. All have offices here. Now, with that in mind, I had to really think about this, and it didn't take me long to realize really what's going on here. Let me give you a little bit of history from my experience. There's two things to bring it up to base. One is something called, what was it called? Not YouTube, not Facebook. Oh, MySpace. Remember MySpace? Some of you may remember that. Before that was LiveJournal. We've always had technology, chatting technology, or journaling technology, which we've been part of. In my case, I've had quite a few of these. But the primary one that I remember more in particular is MySpace. About 10 years before Facebook really became big, MySpace ran into a big lawsuit because the federal government said, hey, we want you to give us certain information off your drives because we have a legal case that we want to use it against, and we want to charge these people. MySpace, there was a big debate, took about 3 or 4 months. MySpace said, okay, fine, we don't really want the federal government to give us any problems, so we're going to give them this information. Subsequently, it caused a big backlash. The community in the MySpace said, hey, this is horrible, we don't want anything to do with this. If you guys didn't give information, then that's not cool. We don't want to be part of it. At the same time, about 6 months before that, Facebook just started. It was only in the colleges. And they were starting to open up the avenue so that way many people could join it, in fact, the general public. So in fact, they did. As soon as that happened, people abandoned MySpace and said, forget you. You're giving your stuff to the government, so we want to not be part of that. So we're going to go to Facebook because they're keeping it secure and safe, and you're not going to relay our communication. Yeah. Some court cases happened thereafter. A lot of people left MySpace. They took off and went to Facebook. Facebook, after 3 or 4 years, that went public, and then they had to start changing their rules a little bit because in public, there's a lot of pressure for them to give some information. They start cooperating with the federal government, giving them information so they can prosecute, etc. Now, I'm not against any of that. I don't have any issues with that. I'm just bringing you a little history of where I feel net neutrality is. So let me bring the second thing. About 15 years ago, I was living in Salt Lake City, Utah, and I worked on a software application for a company called Net Nanny. I don't know if many of you know what that is, but Net Nanny is basically a software application that allows you to plug into your browser so you can control basically what your children or anybody on these computers are watching. Internet Explorer at the time was the big player at the time. They had a pretty good plugin, but it tied into a database. You basically wrote for an API, you basically wrote to it, and you basically able to rank websites so that your children or whoever you didn't want to watch anything on the internet could control it. That went nowhere, and the reason why that went nowhere because really the standard was particular to browsers. So you had Internet Explorer, you had Firefox, you had Google Chrome just coming out, was actually a Switch products. And so basically, a lot of them wrote a little bit to it, but really didn't participate. The reason why they didn't participate because it kind of closed up the internet, and they really didn't quite want to do that. Innovation was on rampant development at that time, so companies really didn't want to participate. But basically, in the last 5 years, there's been a lot of talk, chatter, communication within the Silicon Beach area about products that are moving in that direction. Browsers wanted to become more secure. Microsoft promised more security. There's a lot of chatter amongst the government saying, hey, we need to control this. And basically, net neutrality was at its infancy stage. Now, the last couple of years, that's when it really started changing. Net neutrality started getting a little momentum because they kept saying, oh, we got to protect small businesses. Large businesses are going to take control. Well, you know, I'll be honest with you. I live in IT. I lived in IT my whole life. I've survived and paid my bills on IT. I traveled the world doing IT. And honestly, we did a lot of layer 3. Layer 3, if people don't know what that is, layer 3 technology basically is everything from the hardware to your applications. Layer 3 is the basics foundation, and then the software application layer is the last layer, which you kind of know as your web browser. So it's basically the hardware, the communication, the road that allows you to communicate to your friends, because you go browser to browser, and basically the inside is basically can be thought of as layer 3. That typically is provided by ISP providers. That's kind of what you do know. That's the Comcasts out in the world. That's the used to be the AOLs if you're an older person. It used to be DARPA when it all began, which was a government program that spun off to a private organization, and that's how we see the internet today. Now, with all that being said, I wanted to keep a foundation. Basically, layer 3 products had security in it. They had the ability to filter, but they chose not to turn it on because it really would be content filtering, and they really wanted, and there were some court cases that passed through that says, hey, everything on the internet, no matter how offensive, is protected on the First Amendment. First Amendment is freedom of speech. So basically from there, we kind of like, over the last 4 years, government's like, we got to come up with something. We really want to control this. They keep arguing we want security. But you know, I have traveled the world, and I've been to India, I've been to China, I've been to a lot of third world countries, or now second world, quickly coming to first world countries, and those governments do filter the internet. They do prevent from their population from seeing things. Now, America isn't quite doing that. Everything is still feel free. In fact, last year I actually happened to be in Mexico City when they passed a legislation. And there's a huge riot about it because they basically said, we're not going to allow you to watch anything that we feel is uncomfortable. So they became the regulatory. No different than what we've now decided to do with this net neutrality. So now let me take that to where we are today. Net neutrality basically is a guise to really control. Now, I actually currently just finished a project for Warner Brothers. And what we did is we developed a software that allowed them to submit games, because you know games are regulated, not necessarily by the FCC, well, they are not, but regulated internally. And basically what they do is they have ratings for everything from violence to sexual to nudity. It's very large. In fact, I can think of there's probably almost 100 different levels of ratings that games go through in order to be published to the different gaming companies. They call them first parties. Now, from that, you could take basically what is net neutrality going to really do for us? Well, let me tell you what it's going to do. I'm going to cut this short. I'm not going to tell any more story, no more history. I'm going to tell you what I know. What I know is net neutrality now gives us the ability, government, to regulate. Now, I got to mind you, there was 3 Democrats that actually made this law come into effect. 2 Republicans said no. Now, I'm not going to say if it was flip-flopped and there was 3 Republicans and 2 Democrats that they would in fact voted the same way. I don't know. We don't know that. That's a hypothetical that doesn't exist. But what I can tell you today, 3 Democrats did say, yes, we should implement this law, these rules, these regulations, because they in fact protect small business. I'm going to tell you how it truly does not protect small business. In fact, it doesn't have anything to do with small business. What it has truly to do is regulation. Basically, it allows us to bypass the First Amendment, freedom of speech. It allows us to control the internet because now, just like 15 years ago when Net Neutrality had these problems where they couldn't filter content because none of the pages were ranked. What I mean by that is that when we began Net Neutrality, what we had to do is go through every page. We had to write a crawler. We had to take out offensive words, and then we had to rank that in order to a certain category, so that way we could tell the consumer, people who were purchasing our filtering product, that in fact it was a safe web page to go to. Now, if the federal government had given us a kind of gave us some help, if they had made people rank the web pages, if they made them filter certain content and push it to a certain page where they had to log in or we had to rank or put in a quarter whether this page was safe or not, truly that would have helped us as a product be able to sell another product so we can get filtering. Now, currently that's being handled. Many ways, and how corporate offices do that is they actually have filtering software that they call proxies, proxy servers. They go out and they actually do filter all these products. So a product that's a client-based product like Net Neutrality is kind of useless. But it's still the same. Because basically what those products are doing is they're ranking things, and they're called, it's ranked by IP addresses. It's ranked by companies of saying that this material, this web page should be whitelisted or blacklisted, and it shouldn't be. We shouldn't allow people to go there because they've had bad or scrupulous behavior. Well, that's exactly the problem here. My advocacy or lack of advocacy for net neutrality is based on the fact that at this point, at this juncture, there doesn't show a real need for us to be filtering web pages. Nor does it show us a real need to be filtering the ability for companies to charge more for higher demand data. Now, let's talk about higher demand data. Higher demand data does not mean that, in fact, I'm going to do this as a business because I don't want you to succeed. Because, see, really, that doesn't make any sense. I'm a business, and my business is to make money. My business is to charge the most money for businesses who use most of my product, which, in fact, is internet access. That doesn't mean I'm going to filter through your products. That doesn't mean anything. What that means is I'm going to make sure that I receive the most funds for providing you a service. Now, I'm not going to turn it off to you. I'm not going to turn down innovation because truly, that doesn't make any sense. Why would I do that? Why would I turn away my customer from giving them a better product? It's like me saying I make the best coffee in the world. So I'm going to charge you $5, but I'm going to charge the next guy $2.50 because he's making something new that I don't like. Perhaps he's making a coffee shop down the street. That isn't how business works. So really, the fear factor of saying that we want to protect businesses from overtaking other businesses and creating monopolies is silly because we already have laws that protect monopolies. In fact, not that we've created this policy and made it a regulation and we've never seen it, we truly have a problem because now that product can be restricted based on rules that we don't know anything of. Now let's take this one more step and where this can take us. Well, my belief is that this could take us to exactly where they wanted to go to begin with. Whether it's Republican or whether it's Democrat is insignificant at this point. Because like I said before, if it was 3-2, Democrats, Republican as it was, or Republican Democrats, it would have possibly changed or not changed. We don't know. So let's say that the next step in this regulation is they want to filter content. If they want to make sure that rated X websites are in fact rated X websites and that they can penalize people for doing that, well, now we have the vehicles to do it. If they want to go to websites and say these websites are offensive and we're going to demand you to tell us that it's offensive material, now all of a sudden, who defines the First Amendment? A regulation group who writes a law or who writes text that says this is in fact bad offensive material? Now, don't get me wrong. I don't believe that, in fact, we should not have a way to stop offensive material. We have that. We just simply close the page. Now, using a regulation to do that, which we have no control of, is not the way to go. It's not the free spirit of America. is in fact a way to control what we see on the internet, use a regulation through the federal government. This isn't like a APS, Arizona Public Service, for electricity. This isn't like your local provider of electricity or roads. This is in fact a way to control access to the internet. So I'm not a proponent of net neutrality, and that's the reason why. So I'm going to do another piece on the what happened on Saturday Night Live last night, but I'm going to do another screenshot. Okay, see you then. Thank you.